But the heavens and the earth, which are now, by the same word are kept in store, reserved under fire against the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men. But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day. The Lord is not slack concerning his promise, as some men count slackness, but is long-suffering to usward, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also, and the works that are therein, shall be burned up. Seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of persons ought ye to be in all holy conversation and godliness, looking for and hasting unto the coming of the day of God, when the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth, wherein dwelleth righteousness. Wherefore, beloved, seeing that ye look for such things, be diligent, that ye may be found of him in peace, without spot and blameless. Revelation 15. And I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues, for in them is filled up the wrath of God. And I saw, as it were, a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast, and over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, stand on the sea of glass, having the harps of God. And then he sing the song of Moses, the servant of God, and the song of the Lamb, saying, Great and marvelous are thy works, Lord God Almighty. Just and true are thy ways, thou King of saints. Who shall not fear thee, O Lord, and glorify thy name? For thou only art holy. For all nations shall come and worship before thee, for thy judgments are made manifest. And after that I looked, and behold, the temple of the tabernacle of the testimony in heaven was opened, and the 7 angels came out of the temple, having the 7 plagues, clothed in pure and white linen, and having their breasts girded with golden girdles. And one of the 4 beasts gave unto the 7 angels 7 golden vials full of the wrath of God, who liveth forever and ever. And the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power. And no man was able to enter into the temple till the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were fulfilled.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Rakakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers, and peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful elect out there pushing this word and truth. And it's a series across the 4 winds in the name of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Rakakwadash, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners who have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah. All right, what I want to get into, all right, with this live stream, is going into the hand of the wicked, the kingdom of Satan, so just wanted to go into some history, again this morning, to explain, to bring clarity to what we're seeing playing out. All right, because we know, all right, that you have elites in the background. Okay, these Edomite elites in the background of all these different governments okay, pulling strings, manipulating, circumstances and situation, causing wars, causing, economic collapse, and, causing this and causing that. And ultimately, they're operating off a doctrine of Satanism. Okay. Now, you really see Satanism start to rear its head, within Esau's rulership, during the time of the Enlightenment era, which we're going to get into that, and out of the Enlightenment era, you have the secret society, which is known today as the Illuminati. All right. And when you go into the history of the Illuminati, which I got a video, and we'll go into some of the history, but it was started by, all right, the Rothschild banking family, going back to Mayer Amschel, all right, Rothschild, the father of, okay, the Rothschild banking family, the progenitor, okay. And you had, in the 1700s, he sent out, this Edomite, Adam Weisenhower, okay, to go and infiltrate, as many, organizations, schools, governments, okay, you know, medical, scientists, okay, intellectual, okay, circles that he could, infiltrate and spread, the doctrine of enlightenment, which ultimately is Satanism. We're gonna get into it, okay? And you have, different, secret councils. You have some secret councils that have merged into one, so forth and so on. At the end of the day, it's all under the umbrella, all right, of Esau, Edom, okay, beginning with the elites, all right, and it's all under the umbrella of Satanism, which is rebellion against Yahweh Bashem Shai, and this enlightenment way of thinking, has corrupted the earth, which really is Satanism. And that's another thing with the witchcraft of Esau. He's able to play on words, and he's able to make light of wickedness, okay, by the way he uses words, which there's witchcraft, So the devil know how to water down wickedness and dress it up, okay, with words, so that word enlightenment, okay, it really goes into Satanism when you look at the principles of it, which we'll get into. But let's go here because as the scriptures say, Job 9:24 said, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covered the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? Okay. So the earth was given into the hand of the wicked. Okay. It was given into their authority, their control. The Most High gave the earth over to the devils, man. Okay. And the token of who the wicked is, it said he covered the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? Okay. And you look at the only race of people, okay, to put themselves as the Messiah, as the Most High, as the angels, okay, as the prophets, okay, and push that, as an image throughout the earth, man. There's only one nation of people that did that, and that was Esau, man, the so-called white man. Okay, so that was a token of who the wicked was, who the wicked is, Salaki. All right, and you look at the control, all right, that these devils have in the earth. All right, well, this lines up with the earth being given into their hand, because they've been able to rule the earth economically, okay, militarily, culturally, okay, politically, all right, spiritually. It's a very satanic society under the devil, man. Because the Lord gave it into their hand. All right. And what they did, was to show themselves to be the wicked. They was used to be a punishment for us. These nations, were, they failed the integrity test. They followed this nigga in this wickedness, man. Okay. And he's going to be used, to bring forth punishment on the left hand side, but then he's going to be judged. Okay. He's going to be removed from power. Okay. So Esau Edom is playing his part in the earth as the wicked. Okay. He's doing exactly, okay, what the wicked, right, will be doing. Okay. And of Esau Edom, you have, okay, a tribe of Esau, okay, known as Amalek. Okay. And when you go into the book of Numbers, okay, well, matter of fact, before we get before we get the numbers, let's get this in Exodus, man. Because even when we were first coming out of Egypt, okay, this was the first nation that we encountered, okay, to where we had war with Amalek, all right, coming out of Egypt. Okay, these damn demons, when Joshua, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai, he was able to confound Amalek. It was just a prelude, of Yahweh Shai coming to confound Amalek at the end of this thing, man. Because this system that exists, okay, this financial system, the digital infrastructure, the militaries of the earth, well, they're financed all by the elite bankers, man. Okay? So the way that this beast system functions, okay, is through Amalek. All right. And in these latter days, Amalek will rise to power, again, okay, during the Renaissance. Okay, these devils, these Edomites will rise to power. And then of these Edomites, Amalek will come to the forefront and be the head, all right, of this beast system. Okay, Exodus 17 and 16 said, for he said, because the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shah has sworn that the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. So the Heavenly Father, swore that he will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. You see? And it's not like it's an even playing field. Okay, but these devils, they will always, be opposition to righteousness, man. Okay. And now what we're finna see, the Lord, all right, which he raised up the prophets. There was a spiritual counter to the wickedness, okay, of Amalek, man. Because the earth has just been filled with enchantments, all right, and these enchantments have gone, with no resistance, man. But the Lord raised up the prophets. Now, all right, this devil is being consumed by prophecy. Okay, now he's losing the spiritual war. He's going to get carnal. Okay, and when he gets carnal, the Heavenly Father is going to lift a standard and ultimately send back Yahweh Shai. Okay, so we're seeing the Lord beginning, all right, to respond, all right, to this rebellion of Amalek. Because Esau, his whole rulership is based on being rebellious towards Yahweh Bashim Shai. Okay, and the ideology, his doctrine, his wine, okay, is based on pure rebellion, okay, against the Heavenly Father, against, all right, he is. You see, and the Lord finna respond to this rebellion with great power, and raising up the prophets was the beginning of the Lord responding, okay, to this rebellion. You see? So when you go from there, let's get this. Get this in the book of Numbers. Yeah. So let's get this in the book of Numbers, chapter 24. All right, then we'll segue to the video. All right, this Numbers 24 and 20. All right, and this is a prophecy concerning, okay, Amalek, okay, which they're the forefront of this wicked empire. All right, they're the forefront of Satanism. Okay. Numbers 24 and 20 says that when he looked on Amalek, he took up his parable and said Amalek was the first of the nations. And you look at the status of Amalek today, where they're the chief of the nation, they're the first. Esau, Edom, as a nation, all right, they're in rulership. This is their empire. Okay, and amongst Edomite, you have Amalek, which is the chief amongst Esau. Okay, either you see Amalek, was able, to pull strings and manipulate things behind the scenes, okay, for their interest. They provoke these wars. All right, they manipulate these economies. Okay, they cause certain crises to happen. Okay, so Amalek is at the top of the the ranking order. when it comes to these Edomites, man. You know, and then they were the first of the nations to, they were the first of the Edomites to come into power, going back to the Greeks. You know, you can trace Philip of Macedon, the father of Alexander. You know, you can trace him back to, Haman, and Haman can be traced back to Agag, which was the king of Amalek. Okay, so even going back to the Greeks, which was Esau's first, superpower, all right, government that they had in the earth was under the Greeks, under Alexander. Okay, so the Amalek was the first to put, Esau on the map. Okay, and in this kingdom here is Amalek that calls the shots, man, the first of the nations. Okay, but there's a heavy but his latter end shall be that he perish forever. Okay, because the whole nation of Edom, all right, after 1,000 years of captivity, they're going to perish forever, man. They're going to be done away with as a nation. Okay, the whole nation of Edom, all right, including Amalek. You see, so all this wickedness and madness and the dust that this nigga done kicked up in these latter days, okay, it's all for nothing. All his attempts, because it's Amalek at the forefront of this new world order. You everyday Edomites, you don't have a clue, okay, where Amalek is trying to go with this thing. You don't have the clue, all right, of, the wrath that Amalek is bringing on y'all from the Most High. Okay, you just, you're just fighting to try to maintain the middle class. That's your only complaint. You just want, your middle class. All right, Amalek trying to be the Most High. Okay, through through Alexa. Okay, he's trying to be the Most High through technology, man. Okay, you just trying to watch the LSU game in peace. This nigga wants, okay, technocracy, man. You see? So let's go here, go into a little history, and it makes, it brings clarity to certain things that we see today, and of course certain things we can only speculate, give and take. But it does shed light on particular things, all right, that we see today. Okay. Now let's go here. Now this Johann Adam, all right, Wassenhop, I'm saying it right. But yeah, so they used to have the information, where it showed that, Mayor Amsher Rothschild, okay, financed this guy, and put this guy on the assignment of infiltrating, the different governments and different industries. But you can't find it anymore. It's a lot of information we used to be able to look up. They scrubbed it, okay. But he was pretty much a do boy for the Rothschild, okay, sent to infiltrate governments, okay. So let's play this.
This conspiracy theories. They've been accused of pulling the strings of major governments around the world for inserting symbols into such prominent places as the US dollar bill, and conspiracy theorists have claimed that everyone from the Beatles to Tom Brady to Kanye West are more recent members of the centuries-old society. There's no doubt the Illuminati have impacted world affairs.
And when they say people like Kanye West or Jay-Z is with the Illuminati, well, they're not in the circle of the elites. Okay, they're just puppets. They're used. They're the Illuminati tools. All right, talisman. They're used. All right, their influence is being used to send forth enchantments. Okay, they participate in particular rituals. Okay, because in order to to have wealth, status, and fame, well, you gotta participate in certain rituals. Okay, but they're not in the Illuminati as far as these elite council, these secret councils. Okay, they're giving marching orders. They have handlers. Okay, there's layers and layers and layers and layers. Okay, of what you would call a chain of command. Okay, so Jay-Z is not having a discussion with Jacob Rothschild. All right, Jay-Z has a handler that is certain Edomites that answer to other Edomites, that answer to other Edomites, and they answer to other Edomites. All right, that might talk to the Rothschilds. Okay, so these niggas are not in, Mayweather and these niggas, they're not in the Illuminati. All right, they're just do boys and puppets. Okay, so let's play this some more.
Even if just by being at the center of conspiracy theories. But where did this group get its start? Well, let's take a look at the man behind this secret society, Johann Adam Weishaupt. Johann Adam Weishaupt was born into an academic household in Bavaria. He came into the world on February the 6th, 1748, as the son of a law professor. When Weishaupt was only 5 years old, his father passed away, leaving him to be raised by his grandfather. Also a law professor, Weishaupt's grandfather kept the boy engaged in scholastic activities. His grandfather was a proponent of the Enlightenment movement, and the thoughts and philosophies promoted by Enlightenment thinkers came to greatly influence Weishaupt. During the 17th and 18th century Enlightenment movement, intellectuals emphasized the importance of reason and individualism over tradition. You might also hear the Enlightenment referred to as the Age of Reason. Among the movement's most famous thinkers were John Locke and Isaac Newton. When he was 7 years old, Weishaupt's education expanded beyond his grandfather's teaching.
Now, real quick, just to touch on the Enlightenment, and then we'll pretty much let him run. Well, just to touch on the Enlightenment, okay, because you go into the era of the Age of Enlightenment. It's nothing but Satanism, okay? And they just threw, all right, a pretty word on top of it, okay? Now, when you go into, all right, the Age of Enlightenment, all right? So the Age of Enlightenment, all right? So the Age of Enlightenment, also known as the Age of Reason, all right? And this is where these devils try to reason outside of the scriptures, outside of the way. When it said they challenge traditions, they were talking about the scriptures. Okay? It says, or simply, the Enlightenment was a period of intellectual and cultural flourishing in Europe and Western civilization. Emerging in the late 17th century in Western Europe, it reached its peak in the 18th century as it spread more widely across Europe and into European colonies in the Americas and Oceania, characterized by an emphasis of reason, empirical evidence, and scientific method. All right, as we get this, so this mindset to trust the science. All right, the Enlightenment promoted ideas of individual liberty, which that's Satanism, man. Okay, do as thou wilt. That's why what the women scream today, my body, my choice. That goes back to the Enlightenment thinking, which is satanic. Okay, to where you don't have a responsibility for no one else but you. Okay, religious tolerance, progress, you see that? Progress beyond what? The Bible. Okay, and natural rights. You see? Natural rights outside of what? The scriptures, man. Okay, when they talk about liberation, this is what they're speaking of. Okay, liberating you from the standard of the scriptures. Okay, when the serpent came to Eve, he came in the spirit of liberation and her individual rights. Getting her to what? To neglect, all right, her duty within the nation, within the house, okay, but put emphasis on what? Individual liberty, man. Okay, and that's what we see today. You see, most of the people, especially in America, is a very hyper individual mindset, man. It says thinkers advocated for constitutional government, the separation of church and state. Okay, and the Bible is supposed to run the state. Okay, the Bible is supposed to govern the state. You see, because we're gonna get that in prophecy, man. Ain't supposed to be no separation of the church and state. No, the Bible, okay, is supposed to govern the state. Here it is, these Christians, these Edomites, they came over with Christianity, but they never governed the world with the Bible. Okay, when it comes to how they ran the earth, it was never governed by the principles of the Bible. Okay? So this whole separation of church and state, this was, just segue into Satanism. Okay, it says an application of rational principles to social political reform, which is not meant for these devils, to govern themselves by the Bible. All right, but just exposing the hypocrisy of these devils. They push, super Christians and they believe the Bible. Okay, but they never govern the world by the Bible. Okay, you wouldn't need a constitution. The law, if they were so Christian and Bible believing, you wouldn't need a constitution because you would have the Bible. Okay, the Bible is the Constitution. Okay, well, these devils, as scriptures say, to the wicked, what hast thou to do with my commandments, seeing that thou hatest instructions, man? Okay, so let's go back here. Now, I asked just a real quick Google search. All right, it said, did Enlightenment thinkers, challenge the Bible? It says, yes, Enlightenment thinkers frequently challenge the Bible, prioritizing reason, empirical evidence, and skepticism over traditional religious dogma. Okay, so when you go into the age of enlightenment, that's when these devils really began to openly challenge the Bible. Okay, because this their spirit. This is the spirit of Esau, the serpent, coming back. Okay, it says they questioned spiritual infallibility, rejected miracles. Okay, rejected miracles and used historical criticism to analyze texts. Key figures promoted, deism and secularism, shifting from biblical authority to scientific and natural law. Shifting from biblical authority to scientific and natural law. Okay, and who controls the science? Who sets the standard for science? Okay, in this age, Esau, which a lot of it is pseudoscience, man. Okay, and natural law. Okay, pretty much the law of the jungle. Okay, so this has always been the devil's agenda for a long time. All right, to shift from biblical authority to their science, man. And now it's you gotta throw their technology in the mix, man. Okay, it said rejection of miracles. That thinkers like David Hume argued that miracles violate natural laws and are therefore irrational and implorable, as if the Most High has to fit within their science. Okay, this is when these devils became real bold against the Bible during this Enlightenment age. Okay, you got these niggas like David Hume, as if science, the Most High has to fit within their science. And that's all Esau tries to does. That's all Esau does with his science is try to quantify the Most High. Okay, try to put the Most High in some category, some box, and have him figured out. Nah, man, you can't do that. Your science can't do that. Okay, biblical criticism. Philosophers apply a rational analysis to scriptures, question the traditional authorship of books. Okay, and viewing the Bible as a historical document shaped by culture. Okay, so they downplaying the Bible. Okay, and putting their science above the Bible. As if the Bible has to match up with their science or it's not valid. All right, and that's why you had niggas like Sakari, Gorilla and Deacon. They used to throw out parts of the Bible because they started thinking like these Edomites. Because a lot of these scholars, okay, and these debaters, okay, you see, they even in theologian school they think with the mind of from a perspective of someone that's enlightenment. All right, that enlightenment time thinking. Okay, and that's why you see these niggas get tripped up in all these debates, and you see what them niggas at, man. Okay, you ever had a certain guy? What's the guy? Deacon Yassip. One body and nothing. Them clowns. They used to push that the miracles weren't real. Okay, that's all the enlightenment thinking, man. Okay, so let's go. back to the video, but I just want to get into that enlightenment, show you the basis of it. Okay? But this is what these devils, okay, have infiltrated, throughout the earth, to this enlightenment way of thinking, which is number Satanism. Okay, rebellion. So play this.
Family was Catholic, and Weishaupt began attending a Jesuit school. He was a voracious reader, and by the time he was 20 years old, he had earned his doctorate in law. He began teaching law, but within a year, he became the beneficiary of the dissolution of the very religious order that had educated him. Political maneuvering, coupled with cultural changes, made the Jesuits a threat to the power of some European leaders, at least in their eyes. The order was suppressed in several countries, and even the Pope issued a brief suppressing the Jesuits. Because of the order's suppression in 1773, Weishaupt was able to move from being a professor of secular law to being a professor of canon law at the University of Ingolstadt. Before the suppression, only Jesuits taught canon law. Now Weishaupt could be a professor, but he nonetheless found himself as the only non-clergy member serving as such. Although the order had been suppressed, they still wielded considerable power at the university, and Weishaupt and his Enlightenment-influenced ideas, well, they hit some roadblocks. As a result, Weishaupt grew to dislike clerics. He was frustrated, and he wanted a way to spread the words of the Enlightenment.
My heart's fine.
I'm only 40.
Ignoring your heart health risk is no way.
Without being stonewalled by the church. So he decided to start his own society. And what was the goal of this society? This is the great object held out by this association, and the means of attaining it is illumination, enlightening the understanding by the sun of reason, which will dispel the clouds of superstition and of prejudice. Initially, Weishaupt didn't want to start his own secret society. He had wanted to join the Freemasons, a group that he thought would line up nicely with his passion for reason over religion. But ultimately, he decided that the Freemasons weren't exactly what he wanted, and so he took the leap and started his own society. He did.
Like I say, it was a Rothschild that, sent him forth in finance. Okay, this guy, Alan Weishaupt. All right. Because elites, they're in the background, they're above these secret societies, these elite bankers. Okay. But you can tell, that they've taken on, all right, the doctrine of the Illuminati. Okay. When it came to infiltrating these governments, man. Okay. It's one of the main, secret societies that they, push forward. All right. And that's why you see it so much in the music and the Hollywood. And it's heavy over here in America, man. Okay. Well, remember the elites on the background financing these things. And then, these things wasn't popular when they first started, so the elites always kept a little separation, between themselves and different groups. Okay. Just in case it went bad, they can have probable deniability. Okay. But you already see the Freemasons were already established. Okay. So the Illuminati they will come on later,
Look to the Freemasons for inspiration in rituals and organizational structure, though. Over time, especially after Weishaupt ended up joining the Freemasons, the two groups became more linked in the minds of many, especially conspiracy theorists. To start his society, Weishaupt began reaching out to like-minded men he had befriended at university. But they had to be young men. Anyone over 30 was just too unlikely to be influenced by new ideas. And Weishaupt, he wanted the men who joined to be true believers in the Enlightenment, ready to start spreading the ideals of reason and spreading them as high up as they could. The group of men first met in May of 1776. Only 5 of them arrived in the forest that first night, carrying torches and ready to embark on their quest to spread their ideas to the world. To be initiated into the Illuminati, Weishaupt wanted his members to experience being reborn. This way, they would be leaving behind their lives before joining the Illuminati and be able to fully immerse themselves in their commitment to the new secret society. The initiation rite included sacrifices and mystical elements. Hooded men, unknown identities, and darkened rooms are hallmarks of such rites. Claims have been made that the Illuminati initiation rites have taken the sacrifice element to its most extreme stage, the sacrificing of an actual human being. To be initiated and reborn, the idea is that the new member would have to experience death and be reborn, and actually killing someone would give them an insight into the experience of death. But the initiation rite is also said to have given many members the experience of death and rebirth through the killing of an animal. The Illuminati would put an animal on top of the new member, kill the animal, and just let it bleed to death on top of the new member. Soaking in the animal's blood encouraged rebirth and the understanding of life, death, and knowledge overall. Weishaupt did not want the Illuminati to remain just a small academic society that operated in an echo chamber, though. He wanted it to reach the highest echelons of society, with members both influencing political leaders and even becoming political leaders themselves. But he also didn't want the society to grow full of men he couldn't trust and who weren't truly dedicated to the cause. So the men that met that first night would have to be agreed to by the 5 members present that night, as well as prove themselves to be from families of high standing and wealth. The latter 2 requirements would help with Weishaupt's goal to get his ideas moving up the societal ladder and into the minds of intellectual families and society. Now, the Order's famous name, it didn't come to Weishaupt right away. The first name for his secretive group was the Perfectibilists, a name that they actually stuck with for 2 years. The idea that a man is perfectible was part of the group's ideals. Even American founding father Thomas Jefferson appreciated this trait of Weishaupt and his ideas, stating, "Weishaupt seems to be an enthusiastic philanthropist. He is among those, as you know, the excellent Richard Price and Priestley also are, who believe in the indefinite perfectibility of man. He thinks he may, in time, be rendered so perfect that he will be able to govern himself in every circumstance so as to injure none, to do all the good he can, to leave government no occasion to exercise their powers over him, and, of course, to render political government useless."
See that? Okay, and see everything on the right hand, the left hand mimics in wickedness, man. You know, being born again, which, you know, Yahushua teach about being born again in the mind, you know, killing the old man, all right, that old wicked nature. Okay. But these devils on the left hand side, you know, they're talking about being born again in wickedness, man. Okay. They're talking about being born to rebellion. You see? So they try to mimic everything on the right hand and left hand wickedness, man. Okay. And then they're talking about reaching perfection in wickedness. And they think that they can reach, you know, a certain level of knowledge to where it makes them perfect. They don't have to be perfected through righteousness. Okay. Because first you have to be chosen. There's only one nation of people that's chosen to be perfect. Okay. There's only one nation of people that's chosen to be perfect, and that's the nation of Israel. Okay. So if you're not of the nation of Israel, you're not going to reach perfection. Only Israelites are going to reach their perfection in Yahweh B'Shem Al-Shah, in righteousness, man. But Esau, he thinks on the left-hand side, all right, that he's going to reach perfection through gaining so much knowledge. That's why, by gaining so much knowledge. And that's why he's so big on gathering all this data. You know, he thinks that if he can accumulate enough data, enough knowledge, man, he can perfect himself. He can reach immortality himself, you know, if he can gain enough data, okay, and knowledge, man. Okay, that's the way these niggas think, man. You see, Esau is on this quest, man. The Lord, all right, got Esau on the crash mission, man, on the left hand side. Okay. Well, yeah, going back to the perfectionist, man. Then he said, we're gonna reach a certain level of perfection to where government is gonna be useless. And that's why you see he's doing away with governments, man. Okay? In his mind, he wants to do away with the governments of the world, you know, to where he's gonna create a technology that can govern the world. We don't need that old traditional style of government. You know, we're to a point now to where we reach so much, you know, the pinnacle of knowledge. Okay, we reach the pinnacle of knowledge to where, you know, we don't need governments. Okay, we're gonna go by ourselves. And ultimately, talking about the government on the Most High, he doesn't need the oversight of the Most High. Okay, that's basically what the devil is saying. Now let's go real quick here and then we'll go back to the video. Because I was looking for this precept. This is Matthew 5:48 said, "Be ye therefore perfect, okay, as your Father which in heaven is perfect." Okay, and who is the Father? All right, who are the sons of God? Israelites, the tribe. Okay, so Yahweh Shah saying, "Be ye therefore perfect." Now, of course, we're not going to reach perfection in this body. All right, but we're striving for perfection at the coming of Yahweh Shah. All right, we're going to be changed and be perfected, but we're striving towards perfecting by following Yahweh Shai, as we tap into this word, because we're being truly enlightened in righteousness, man. You see, we've been enlightened in righteousness. We've been illuminated in righteousness, man. Okay, and we have begun the process of being perfected in righteousness, man. Okay, you're going to reach that perfection like the Heavenly Father, man, perfect in righteousness, you see, but we had to go through the process of being refined through suffering, affliction, understanding wickedness, okay, so we can know how to judge it in this perfection, you see. So there's only one group of people, that's being perfected, and that's the sons of God, man, the nation of Israel, okay, the people of the Heavenly Father. We're going to be able to judge matters, from a perfect righteous perspective, as the Heavenly Father judges matters from a perfect righteous perspective. Okay? Of course, we're not going to be equal to the Most High, all right, just to clarify that. Okay? But we're going to be likened, okay? We're going to be likened unto the Heavenly Father, okay, when it comes to reasoning and righteousness, man. Because there's no one that can ever be equal. Nothing that can ever be equal to the Father. Okay. So let's go back to the video.
Before the name Illuminati was officially adopted, Weishaupt also thought about naming the group the B Order. But Illuminati was ultimately decided upon, and Weishaupt took the owl as the group's symbol. So now you might be wondering, well, why did he choose an owl? What exactly is the significance of this bird? Now, Minerva, the goddess of wisdom, was accompanied by an owl. The owl was a way for Weishaupt to indicate the intellectual basis for the secret society, while still keeping its symbolism just a bit coded. The new name was a callback to the occult beliefs within the Spanish culture. During medieval times, alchemists and magicians were believed to be imbued with a light that signified the presence of a higher power within. Within the society, the members took nicknames. Weishaupt, as the head of the order, was Spartacus, while other adopted names for members included Ajax and Tiberius. In 1777, Weishaupt found a new avenue for recruiting. He was accepted into a Freemasons group in Germany and used their society as a place to find well-connected society men who were already acquainted with and interested in secret societies. The men who were welcomed in were told the following: "Should you seek might, power, false honor, excess, seek that we would work for you to provide your temporal advantages. We will bring you as close to the throne as you wish, and then turn you over to the consequences of your folly, but our inner sanctuary remains closed to such. But should you want to learn wisdom, want to learn to make mankind more clever, better, free, and happy."
Tired of sifting through jobs that don't feel like the right fit? Introducing Indeed Career Scout. Find the job that's right for you.
Then be thrice welcomed by us. The men who joined Weishaupt's newfound order found themselves a part of a group that was split into distinct levels. As much as Weishaupt professed the principles of rationalism and individualism related to the Enlightenment movement, the men who were a part of his fold were restricted in their knowledge about what was going on within their own organization. The Illuminati had a hierarchy within the structure, and the members at the bottom reported to those at the top. There were three ranks of men: novice, minerval, and illuminated minerval. Illuminated minerval were at the top of the Illuminati's pecking order, their name inspired by the Roman goddess of wisdom. They spied on each other and on the political and economic goings-on in society, bringing news back to the order and helping the Illuminati move forward in its goals of influencing the top tiers of society. Do you realize sufficiently what it means to rule in a secret society, not only over the lesser or more important of the populace, but over the best of men, over men of all ranks, nations, and religions, to rule without external force, to unite them indissolubly, to breathe one spirit and soul into them, men distributed over all parts of the world? In its first years, the Illuminati didn't grow by leaps and bounds. Initially, they found only a few dozen interested and qualified men to join. They numbered just 60 by 1780. But that year, Weishaupt added a member to the Illuminati who proved himself to be especially helpful in gaining new members. And he also attracted a new level of respect for the secret society. And this new member, he came from Weishaupt's recruiting grounds in the Freemasons. Baron Adolf Knigge had been a member of the Freemasons, but he had risen as far as he could go within their ranks. So when he heard of Weishaupt and his new smaller group, he saw an opportunity to have real sway over what was going on in the organization. He also liked the Illuminati's relationship with mysticism. In forming the order, Weishaupt had relied in part on mystic texts. He read the mysteries of the Seven Sages of Memphis and the Kabbalah, and the two texts made an impact on how he viewed the world around him. Baron Knigge was also a student of such ideas and liked that Weishaupt had brought their influence into the Illuminati. When he joined, Knigge eagerly read the texts required of new members. Most consisted of works that were banned in the conservative Catholic Bavaria. In fact, Knigge read the text so quickly that Weishaupt had to stall for time. He didn't want Knigge to reach the illuminated minerval level so quickly. So he put off Knigge while he tried to come up with new ideas for readings and required actions, but Knigge figured out that Weishaupt was trying to delay his achievements of the highest level. When he brought this up to Weishaupt, Weishaupt was willing to listen. He was also willing to listen to Knigge's new ideas for the order. For one, Knigge said the order needed a rearrangement of its hierarchy. He suggested bringing in new levels under the existing 3 levels. The end result of this was 13 ranks of Illuminati members, each subdivided within the original 3 levels. The 3 new overarching levels had the names of the Nursery, the Masonic Grades, and the Mysteries. Knigge also used his influence to change Weishaupt's strong messaging about the church and about religion. He realized that such a strong stance might be hampering the group's ability to grow and recruit. The church wielded much power in Bavaria in the 18th century, and even the promise that a society was secret might not be strong enough assurance for men from powerful families to risk joining. Weishaupt listened to Knigge and the Illuminati they benefited. From an organization of just 60, they grew to 200 by 1782. Then the group grew to 3,000 members by 1784. The Illuminati had also spread beyond Bavaria. Membership now included Hungary, Poland, and Italy. But having that many members spread throughout a number of countries made it harder and harder to keep things quiet. And if their very purpose was to infiltrate and influence political thought and actions, then of course the upper echelons of society would start to notice them. In 1784, their growth became a problem. Members of the Illuminati were sending correspondence back and forth, and the government had their eye out for it. Writings with internal Illuminati ideas and policies were intercepted in Bavaria. It's also been thought that this interception was set up. By this point, Weishaupt had some disgruntled members within his ranks. When started the organization, he told some members there would be supernatural communication if they achieved the highest level within the society. But plenty of people had achieved this by 1784, and there was no supernatural communication to be had. Baron Knigge and Weishaupt, they also had a major disagreement. They didn't have the same idea about some of the society's rituals, and their arguments culminated in Knigge leaving the secret society. The same year he left the Illuminati, the Bavarian government banned all secret societies. That was in 1784, which was the same year that the membership had exploded. By the next year, the Bavarian government took it a step further. They banned the Illuminati specifically. As part of the Illuminati's banishment, the government began raiding the documents of known Illuminati. Documents started to be published, and this secret society and its membership, it wasn't so secret anymore. Public officials became known as members, putting their livelihoods and societal rankings on the line. The Illuminati simply couldn't function with its membership being known. Throughout all of this society building and government influencing, Weishaupt had still been working as a professor at the University of Ingolstadt. But when the government banned the Illuminati, he was forced to flee his home and leave behind his job. Weishaupt wasn't kind to government of any sort, not just Bavaria, so it is not surprising that they were not pleased with his writings. So just how strongly did he feel about the government? Well, take this quote. "When man lives under government, he has fallen, his worth is gone, and his nature tarnished." When the Illuminati were banned from Bavaria, Weishaupt was forced to flee to Gotha, another part of Germany. There, Weishaupt was protected by a sympathetic duke. Duke Ernest not only provided political protection for Weishaupt, but he also gave him a pension that allowed him to live without working. Even though the Illuminati had been disbanded in Bavaria, Weishaupt kept pushing the ideas that had led him to start the secret society in the first place. He began writing, ultimately publishing 4 books about the history of the Illuminati and defending its existence. The books were intended both to defend himself and to perhaps encourage new growth for the Illuminati. But when Weishaupt passed away in 1830, the Illuminati had all but disappeared from the world stage.
And see, you can tell, because he's talking about it disappeared, and these devils, this sect. All right, remember, this is a secret society, that's under, all right, the bankers. Okay, and they talk about this disbandment, over the 1784. Okay, but what you have to understand, it had already reached the Americas. Okay, and that's why even when you go into, all right, the birth, okay, of America in 1776, okay, you already had Illuminati influence, okay, within, all right, the government of America. Okay, so, and that's one thing that these devils, do as well. They throw a certain sect under the bus, like Epstein. Like they put Epstein under the bus. Okay, they threw him under the bus as if he was the beginning and end, okay, of the PDF file and the rituals. And no, there's just one part, so you have to understand Adam Weisenhop, all right, he was just one part, because it grew into 3,000 members. Okay, and these devils, they'll set up a fall guy, to take the fall, while the organization continues on. Okay, so let's go from there. Just to show real quick. All right. Well, when you go into just the back of, when you go to the back of the dollar. Okay. So the Latin phrase is, which Latin is the language of witchcraft. All right, the Latin phrase commonly associated with the New World Order on the back of the US dollar is Novus Ordo Seclorum. Okay, located underneath the pyramid. Okay, on the Great Seal. The phrase translates to a new world. All right, of the ages. Okay, because the elites, through America, has been able to push towards a new world order. America was always about being a platform to begin to set up a new world order. Okay. So a new world of the ages. All right. And this is on the back of the dollar. Okay. It says, and it was coined in 1782. Okay. But then you had, established in 1776. So in May 1776 was the birth of the Illuminati. All right, and then 3 months later, two months later, you had what? The birth of America, man. Okay. So America was founded on Illuminati, all right, principles. Okay. And the Enlightenment, mindset. All right. The founding fathers, a lot of them were Masons, because eventually you had the Masons and the Illuminati, come together. Okay. And a lot of these Masons that was already established, okay, these different governments and different, business sectors and institutions and, scientists and, okay, they began to take on more of an enlightenment, okay, type philosophy, okay, of the Illuminati, okay. So it says, the coin said, meaning coin in 1782 by Charles Thompson, a Latin expert and Secretary of Continental Congress. It signifies the beginning of a new American era, okay? But ultimately signified of a new world order. They wanted, they've been wanting a global world order. Now Esau tried to water it down, okay, like it's just meaning the meaning of, a new American era. No, this was the meaning of a new world order back then. All right, because you keep going into, it said the phrase is derived from a line, all right, in the Eclogus by the Roman poet Virgil. Okay, it says Magnus ab intergo sericlorum noscita orda. All right, the greatest cycle of ages is born anew. Okay, it says I want to get to, it says other Latin on the dollar bill, okay, annuit coeptis, okay, above the pyramid. So why is it Egyptian pyramid on the back of American dollar? Okay, because it goes back to this ancient mysticism, man, ancient witchcraft and left hand magic, man. Okay, and it says above the pyramid, meaning he has favored our undertakings. Okay, and this is speaking of Satan. Okay, so you have all this terminology, this Latin terminology on the back of a dollar. Okay, the pyramid, the all-seeing eye. Okay, which is a sign of the Illuminati. Okay, e pluribus, all right, unum. It says on the eagle's banner, meaning out of many one. Okay, out of many one. All right, and this is speaking about all the governments of the world that they want to turn into one. Okay, like I said, they're trying to water it down. Say referring to the unification of the 13 colonies. Hell no. Okay. They're talking about how the many governments one, because the bank was already, all right, dealing with multiple governments at this time. All right. The Illuminati and Freemason, they had already infiltrated multiple governments at the time. All right. Their plans went way beyond some goddamn unifying 13 colonies, man. Okay. So these devils, have been in the background for a while, manipulating and controlling these different governments and infiltrating, different governments and spreading enlightenment, which is Satanism, okay, as a way forward. Okay. And now that they have this technology, all right, they're in the mindset to go with their move. Okay. Now they're in the mindset to go with their move. Okay. So let's get a couple precepts. I say you just want to tap into that. Let's go here. Matter of fact, let me end it here. Let's go to let's go to Malachi. All right, the book of Malachi, chapter 1. All right, in verse 4. I want to get an NLT, okay? Because this is what we had in prophecy, man. So this is the book of Malachi chapter 1, verse 4. It said, Esau's descendants in Edom may say, we have been shattered, but we will rebuild the ruins. Okay? So Esau's descendants, which are, all right, so-called white people of today, okay? They call themselves Europeans. All right, these are Edomites, man. Okay, the earth has been colonized by Edomites. They call it European colonization. American imperialism is Edomites, man. These are the descendants of Edom that run the earth today, man. Okay, so we have been shattered, but we will rebuild the ruined places. Yeah, because they fell as pagan Rome. Okay, and even under pagan Rome, they wanted the earth to be Romanized. Okay, They was all about spreading, Roman culture and Roman thought and Roman philosophy throughout the earth then. Okay, but they didn't have the technology or the reach as they do today. Okay, so the Renaissance, they came back. Okay, and this is when they fully tapped into their blessing with the fatness of the earth through the sword. It said, but the Lord of heaven's armies replies, they may try to build, but I will demolish them again. Okay, so these devils, have wiggled, okay, out of the the ruins of ancient Rome, and they began to rebuild. All right, they've rebuilt, a digital Rome. Okay, and in this time they're going to establish this digital Rome forever. Okay, with the enlightenment, ideology, with their technology, with witchcraft. They got the sword, they got the finances. Okay, so in their mind, they're going to forward this digital Rome. All right, but no, the Lord said, I would demolish them again. And now we're in the time where the Lord's going to demolish them again. It said their country will be known as the land of wickedness, and their people will be called the people with whom the Lord is angry forever, man. Okay, their people is the people with whom the Lord is angry forever, man. Okay, and the Lord is forever angry. Remember, he will have war with Amalek from generation to generation, man. And now he's going to display that anger through judgment. Okay, he's going to allow this war, all right, to get out of hand. The devils destroy themselves, begin to destroy themselves, and then Yahweh Shai is going to come and finish their ass off, man, along with these other heathens, all right, that have been indoctrinated with this madness, man, this rebellion. Okay, so that's the point. I'll leave it there, Lord will. You brothers, all right, and you sisters was edified once again, and give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Rakakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers, and peace and blessings, salutation, and hopefully